The Tartarian Empire, the forgotten name on the map. The flicker of a candle dances across a cluttered wooden desk. The smell of hot wax mingles with the faint tank of ink. It is the year 1654, and a man in a wool coat leans over a vast sheet of parchment. His quill, freshly dipped, trembles for just a moment before touching the page. Slowly, with steady, practiced strokes, he writes a single word in elegant black script Tartaria. On the wall behind him, other maps hang like trophies, each one filled with mountain ranges drawn by hand, coastlines traced from memory, or whispered accounts of sailors. But this Tartaria, it's different. It is not a single kingdom, not an empire in the way we think of Rome or Ming China. It is a vast, mysterious swath of land stretching from the edge of Siberia to the heart of Central Asia, from the icy shores of the Arctic to the borders of Persia and India. To European eyes, it is a place both real and imagined. Real, because traders and travelers speak of it. Imagined, because no European has mapped all of it. And much of what's known is stitched together from rumor, ancient chronicles, and fragmented observations. It's a name that will linger on maps for centuries, a name that will one day fade, leaving behind whispers, questions, and a strange fascination. The word Tartary finds its earliest echoes in medieval Europe, derived from the Latin Tartaria and the Old French Tartare. These terms weren't invented by cartographers. They were inherited from travelers' tales and most famously from the accounts of people like Marco Polo in his 13th century travels. Polo described vast lands under the sway of the Mongol Empire, peopled by nomadic tribes, warriors, and strange customs unfamiliar to the West. European chroniclers often lumped these lands together, regardless of whether they were ruled by the Golden Horde in the West, the Yuan dynasty in the East, or smaller khanates in between. Tartary became a convenient label, much as we might say the Middle East today, a broad geographic term rather than a political identity. To understand why Tartary appeared, we need to step back into the Mongol era. When Genghis Khan's forces surged out of the steppes in the early 1200s, they created the largest contiguous land empire in history. European chroniclers, seeing this unstoppable tide, began referring to these lands as belonging to the Tartars, a word possibly influenced by the Greek Tartarus, meaning underworld, perhaps reflecting the fear these warriors inspired. In truth, the Mongols themselves weren't called Tartars. That name belonged to one specific tribe absorbed into the Mongol Confederation. But the term stuck. For Europeans, Tartary was simply where the Tartars live, which meant anywhere from the Caspian Sea to the Pacific Ocean. By the 15th and 16th centuries, the rise of great European mapmakers like Mercator, Tartary began appearing as a distinct label on world maps. You might see it divided into Great Tartary in Siberia, Little Tartary in Crimea, and Chinese Tartary in the Far East. Maps from Nicholas Sanson in 1654, Joan Blaeu in 1664, and Guillaume Delisle in the early 1700s all showed Tartary as vast and somewhat undefined. This wasn't deception, it was the honest admission of how little was known. Much of northern Asia remained unexplored by Europeans, and so cartographers filled the blanks with hearsay, indigenous reports, and educated guesses. Despite the mystery, there were threads of reality woven through the name. Russian expansion into Siberia in the 16th and 17th centuries brought fur traders and Cossack explorers into lands once labeled Tartary. Jesuit missionaries in China sent back letters describing Chinese Tartary, what we now call Xinjiang, Inner Mongolia, and Manchuria. In these reports we find vivid details: yurts on the steppes, caravans winding along the Silk Road, frozen rivers that became winter highways, and markets where Chinese silk met Siberian sable. The people were diverse: Turkic-speaking Cossacks, Mongols, Tungusic tribes, and others. But to Europeans, they were all Tartars. It was important to note there was never a single Tartarian empire in the political sense. The lands called Tartary were controlled by many powers, from the Russian Tsardom in the west to the Qing dynasty in the east. The name was an umbrella, a European shorthand that masked incredible diversity. By the 18th century, as Russia consolidated Siberia and Qing China absorbed Central Asian territories, the map of Tartary was slowly being replaced by modern borders. By the late 19th century, advances in geography and political mapping rendered Tartary obsolete. Atlases replaced it with Siberia, Central Asia, Manchuria, and other more precise names. The term survived in some historical works, but on the map it was gone, a relic of an earlier age of exploration and ignorance. Today, Tartary exists only in old books and fading maps, a ghost of a word that once represented half a continent. It was never a secret empire, never a lost civilization, but it was something just as fascinating, a mirror of how we see the unknown. For the mapmakers, it was a label for mystery. For us, it is a reminder that names on a page are never just geography. They read the stories we tell about the world. We haven tea yet seen,